Okay, well, thought I'd do a update on the little pickup truck here. As you can see, it's been a rough few days. So, you can also see over here, I swapped out the differential. So this is my original differential. It was a 3.07 that came in the truck. I had the gears polished down at Weddle Industries, the rim finishing, ISF, super finishing stuff. Unfortunately, I got lazy and I didn't set the pinion height correctly, and so the differential whined. But even worse than that, with the W58 transmission, it didn't allow me to use fifth gear, short of going 110 miles an hour. So with my tire and wheel combination and the gear ratio and everything, I ended up getting a different differential. I ended up getting a 410. So it was 41 teeth on the ring and 10 on the pinion. And that worked perfectly with the 28-inch wheel and tire combo on the truck and the gear ratios in the W58 transmission. With that transmission there and the 410 differential, the speedometer worked within 1 mile per hour of the GPS. So I'm real thrilled about that. The reason I pulled the cylinder head off, and I've got a new cylinder head from LC Engineering as well as their EFI Pro cam, and I'm converting over to the dual row timing chain as well. But you can see what's going on here. I'm soaking the tops of the pistons with Marble Mystery Oil to try to loosen up some of the carbon in there, and going along with the toothbrush. You can see the state of the deck there on the top of the cylinder head. So originally the reason I pulled the head off was because I was having some real weird problems. In cylinder number 1, and I was talking to Tony over at LC Engineering about this. In cylinder number 1, for some mysterious reason, it was 210, I think it was, PSI. 200, 210, 205 PSI, while everything else was 180. And what's weird is when I got the truck originally, the compression ratio was 170 across the board, and then somewhere along the lines things changed. So I don't know, exactly. I couldn't figure out what in the heck would cause the compression to be so high, in cylinder number 1. So I tried cleaning carbon out. So I finally said, okay, I'm just going to pull the head off and see what's going on. Also, the motor was burning a lot of oil. So I just figured, well, most likely the short block is okay, but something is out of whack with the cylinder head, and I wanted to, do the dual row timing chain stuff. So I ended up pulling the cylinder head off, and what I discovered was somebody had used head gasket sealer on the motor, as near as I can determine, because there was this weird graphite kind of gluey stuff all over the place, and it had blocked some of the coolant passages. I've opened them up now with the toothbrush and cleaned them, but it was really bad. And also on some of the head bolts, and let me show you here, you could see that there was carbon that had infiltrated, which I guess was, you can kind of see on some of them here. You can see there was, on some of them, there was a lot of carbon that had gotten up in there. So I presume that at some point the head gasket started to go, and see, like this one, you can really see what a mess it is up there if you look closely. So that tells me that exhaust was seeping past the head gasket, I guess, and getting up into the head bolt area. And so I presume that somewhere prior to me buying the truck, I don't know if it was the guy I bought the truck from or the guy who had put the motor in that he bought it from, or what, or maybe it was just the motor they yanked out of the junkyard and put on, they didn't know it. But it's somewhere along the line somebody dumped some head gasket sealer into the motor. Now, I personally don't use products like that. I don't know exactly what happens to a motor if you do that. But what was interesting was there's a lot of this weird kind of silvery graphite, and I've since removed it from the deck, and I'm cleaning it. But I'm not a fan of products like that. However, interestingly enough, I think in this case it actually helped to maintain the integrity of the block in a way where if they hadn't used it, it probably would have corroded, kind of some of these areas. So it took a long time to kind of get it off the surface, but it actually preserved the surface really well. So it actually might have kind of been, fortunate that it was used. So because I couldn't figure out why there was so high compression in cylinder number 1, I just figured, well, I'll pull the thing apart and see what's going on. And I could only do so much, taking measurements in through this spark plug hole and trying to clean. So now that I've got it open, I'm pretty happy with the state of it, everything. The pistons look to be, in good condition. I don't see anything, no melted pistons in the cylinder head. I don't see anything like I thought maybe a valve seat had come undone, or like there was a huge amount of corrosion in chamber number 1. I'm not going to bother to CC the head, because if you look, the amount of carbon that's built up in there wouldn't really equate to a 200 plus PSI rating, I don't think. And so I just figure, well, if somebody dumped a head gasket sealer in, there's a possibility that it kind of just got in around, and you can kind of see what it did there to the head gasket. I just figured if somebody dumped head gasket sealer in, kind of all bets are off, and you can see it plugged up the coolant passages. So, if you use head gasket sealer on your particular vehicle, just keep in mind that that's kind of a stopgap measure between, the motor blowing and, you doing the job right, I guess you'd say, So, like I say, it's hard to kind of, play detective after the fact, but as near as I can figure, head gasket sealer was used for this, but that's okay. So I'm gonna get this all cleaned up. I think I'm gonna maybe polish the tops of the pistons, do a little more clean. I don't want to use anything too abrasive, but I'm gonna get this guy back down to a state of clean, not the way the block would come rolling out of the machine shop, but the most I can do for working on it in the car kind of thing. Put the new dual row timing chain on, the new front cover, flush the motor out, and then slap this guy back together and see how the motor performs. And so that's kind of the current state. But overall, especially since I changed the differential, put in a new differential, overall the truck has just been an absolute joy to drive. So I'm really excited to get this thing all buttoned up. And the other thing I did was, let me see if I can there's not really too much to see, but the other thing I did is I pulled the drive shaft out, and you'll have to pardon the light there, but I pulled the drive shaft out because I was using, you have to excuse my workbench over here, but I was using these creeper joints that I bought from LC Engineering, and they came with these little snap rings, but I guess I didn't really understand how critical the alignment of U-joints were, and I did the job, and I kind of botched it a little bit because I'd never done it, but I learned a lot on it. And then when I drove the truck, I was getting a lot of vibration, going down the highway, and I started, I went on YouTube and I watched a lot of Weber Automotive's videos about balancing drive lines and doing all kinds of stuff with gearboxes, and I came to the conclusion that the differential was probably either out of round in there, or it was out of balance, or both. So what I did was I ended up going and buying some slightly thicker snap rings from McMaster-Carr and swapped them over, and in the process that took out some of the play. I think these are about 10 thousandths thicker. So that took out some of the play and helped me align the U-joints. And then I used the lathe over here, which I'm in the process of taking apart. But I used the lathe kind of and a dial indicator to check that everything was, kind of centered. And what I was able to do was get the run out on the drive shaft. So on the truck, what I do is I put a dial indicator on the drive shaft back at the differential, measured the flange of the differential, then measured the drive shaft. So the flange of the differential had 4 thousandths run out, and then right where it bolted to the drive shaft had 4 thousandths run out. So that was good. Originally, before I changed the snap rings and realigned my U-joints, I had 35 thousandths run out where the yoke goes into the gearbox. So that was way out of whack. So what I did was I marked, when the U-joint or when the drive shaft went around, I marked the area where it was out farthest, and then I slipped the U-joint, slipped the drive shaft back over and put the new clips in, and that got it down to I think about 20 thousandths or something like that. And then once I measured the run out again, I kind of used my impact wrench. What do you call it? The air hammer thingy that I showed in one of my other videos, the snap-on one. I forget what exactly you call it, but it's an air hammer kind of thingy for pounding, And so I used that, and I was able to nudge the U-joints over, and that allowed me to get the front of the drive shaft within, I want to say it was 16 thousandths out of round up there, and in the middle it was 8 thousandths out of round. So that's starting to approach the tolerances that you want. So after driving the truck with the U-joints kind of dialed in a little bit more, it was much smoother. The other thing I wanted to mention that kind of helped smooth things up was on the clutch pedal in there, I had not adjusted the proper slack, and I was reading the owner's manual the other day, and it says, you're supposed to have adjust the clutch pedal where you have 5 millimeters of play. You can push the pedal down before it makes contact. So I backed that off. I think that took some pressure off the throw-out bearing, and that actually smoothed things up a little bit. So like I said, the truck's been just a joy to drive. I also replaced the hinge, factory hinge on the driver's side door, so that's kind of cool because now no air comes flowing in on the highway. I'm getting ready to do the passenger side as well, and I ended up just buying the actual factory hinges. I was going to do one of those little bushing repair kits, but my hinges were pretty far gone. So I just sprung for the bill there and bought the actual Toyota factory hinges, and so the doors are on there real nice, at least the driver's side is. And so I'll be getting the new cylinder head on pretty soon, and then we'll see how this truck runs. But it's starting to come together, and like I say, even with the compromised kind of cylinder head gasket and the motor having some weird vibration around 2,000 RPMs, because I think cylinder number 1 had too much pressure, so I think it was causing it to be off balance internally. So now that I've got the new cylinder head going on, and hopefully the pressures will be equalized in the cylinders, I'm looking forward to seeing how smooth this is. And with the ported cylinder head and the cam and the exhaust system and all that, I'm hoping I might get, it's hard to talk about horsepower numbers without a dyno, but I would, based on what I've read at LC Engineering, if I got an extra 15, maybe 20 horsepower out of this motor, I'd be pretty thrilled. So that's kind of where things currently stand on the little truck. I'm going to try to get the pistons cleaned up here and finish cleaning up the block a little bit, and then start putting things back together. And then once it's all done, I'm gonna fire it up and burnish in the cam, and hopefully that'll be kind of the end of getting the motor working. I only need the truck to be reliable for 4 or 5 years until I put the 3RZ turbo motor in, but when I'm cruising around, I do want the 22RE to be reliable. So, but anyways, I thought you guys would get a kick out of seeing kind of how things were going. Oh, and then another interesting thing was, check this out. I ran a really heavy duty ground strap because I was trying to figure out why the motor was running uneven. I thought, maybe it's not grounding. So I added on the side of the block, I made a little ground strap, as you can see, and then I ran it up and I bolted it to the cylinder head. And I gotta say, wow, when I did that, the motor really ran much better. I also switched over to some MSD here, and I'll show them here. I also switched over at the same time to some MSD spark plug wires, and I gotta tell you, these spark plug wires are super duper nice. Just really high quality. And I have a little device that allows me to measure the voltage level and the spark duration on the different spark plugs when the motor is running. And yeah, here we go. And I think they have these in black also. These particular ones are red. But if you're looking for spark plug wires for your 22RE, I can highly recommend these. I'm really impressed with the good quality, and the voltage levels shot through the roof when I switched over to these, and put some new plugs in and everything. So, but really good wires. Like I say, when I get the truck all back together, I'll kind of do another rundown on it, so, and let you guys know how it turned out. So that's kind of an update on the truck. Thanks for following along, and like I say, once I get the new cylinder head and everything on, I'll make another update and kind of let you guys know whether that had a big impact or not. So, okay, as always, thanks for watching.